Part 24. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 231. Gu Yunjiao hurriedly said, "Quickly untie him and help him into the room." Ahu and Linchuo quickly put down their jobs and freed Laoju from the pillar line. Laoju waved his hand, "I don't care." He stood for a while, then squatted down and looked at the worms wriggling in the basin. "Is it because of this thing that I am addicted to alcohol?" Gu Yunjiao could only say, "Yes." She didn't know if it was a wine bug, maybe a parasite. Laoju may be a psychological effect now. She looked at Laoju, "Are you still hungry for wine?" Laoju waved his hand with a look of disgust, "I smell this now and I feel like vomiting." He didn't think it was dirty either. He fished out the bug, threw it on the ground, and stepped on it. Biachu stepped on it into a puddle of mud. Laoju moved too fast, and Gu Yunjiao didn't have time to stop it. She said regretfully, "I heard that if this worm is placed in clear water, the clear water will turn into wine. I don't know if it is true." The worm was dead, and Gu Yunjiao didn't know. Lu Zhu sighed, "Old Ju, you have suffered a great loss. Otherwise, you can make a fortune by selling wine in the future." Laoju waved his hand, "I don't have the life to make a fortune. I'm hungry, let's eat." Gu Yunjiao looked at him with a funny look, "You really don't drink anymore?" Laoju frowned, "You are not allowed to mention this word to me in the future." Gu Yunjiao smiled, "That's it, then I'll give you your wages next month." She covered her mouth and smiled, "When I save a few taels of silver, I will marry a daughter-in-law, and maybe I will have a big fat boy." Laoju paused, sighed, and went to the main room. He is 40 years old, and he hasn't married a wife for so many years, also because he can't save money. As long as he has money in his hand, he will drink wine instead. Hearing Gu Yunjiao talking about marrying a daughter-in-law and giving birth to a big fat boy, he felt a little feverish. After eating, Mrs. Chen instructed Atai to take the pot of water out of the house and pour it out far away. When I came back, I washed the basin and water ladle several times. She sniffed the water scoop repeatedly and shook her head, "No, this scoop still smells of wine." Osman thus smiled and said, "It's okay, just leave it outside to dry overnight." At the same time, in Maki's house, Master Machi was listening to someone reporting to him. "I asked people to ask around, this family is all from Nanzhou. That little girl, Dr. Gu, is also the shopkeeper. Some people say that they have no local roots, and some say that they may have something to do with Kong Wangfu. It is said that someone has seen the son of that family come out of Kong Wang's mansion." Maki looked serious and stared at second young Master Jin. "Did you hear, Rengzhen Tang, you are not allowed to go there, or I will beat you." Jin Lao Er murmured, "What King Kong, who knows if it's true or not?" Maki sneered, "It's true or false, as long as it has something to do with King Kong, it's not something we can move, we can't even think about it. You are getting more courageous now, and you don't even care about the prince." Jin's second child slapped his face and did not speak. Maki's daughter-in-law kicked Jin's second child, "Don't worry, he knows the seriousness." Maki took a sip of tea and said, "Tomorrow, Lao Wang and I will go to Rengzhen Hall. No matter what, this matter can't be left alone, we have to find some face and come back, otherwise our Xiangang can't be here. Xiang Cheng is messed up. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth." Author, Jinkui. Chapter 232. The next day, he got up early for breakfast, and Laoju really didn't ask for any more alcohol. Everyone admired Gu Yunjiao more and more. Ahu said to Linchuo again, "Young master, we can see how rare it is for us to meet Dr. Gu. She can save people who have died. She can even cure such a bizarre disease. It's God's will for you to live." Linchuo was silent for a long time before slowly saying, "You don't have to worry about me, since Dr. Gu saved me, I have lost all those thoughts. Ahu smiled, that's good. He rolled his eyes, young master is now 19, we have to live our lives in the future and save more money. When the time comes, I will ask the matchmaker to tell the young master a good girl. Before Ahu finished speaking, he was interrupted by Linchuo coldly, the word love is the most harmful to people. In this life, I will not marry a wife. Ahu sighed in his heart, he said this to test the sun, and sure enough, the knot in the sun's heart is not so easy to untangle. Alas, if they have a home they can't go back to, when will they be wandering outside? Ahu was about to go downstairs to perform his guard duty when Linchuo suddenly said, I'll go with you. He felt he couldn't be so depressed any longer. Since he is now Dr. Gu's bodyguard, he must perform his guard duty well. He thinks it's pretty good here. The people here are simple. Every day he only thinks about what to eat and drink. He also thinks about nothing every day. He doesn't have to face those complicated people and things in the capital, and it may be a good choice to live a normal life like this. The two went downstairs, standing at the door like two door gods. Gu Yunjiao glanced at it, fortunately there were 3 doors in front of the door, and it couldn't block anything. 2 handsome guys standing at the door, maybe they can attract some business. Now Reng Xintang's business is still half dead, receiving a few prescriptions a day, almost no one comes to see her for medical treatment. Ma Qi took Lao Wang to the door of Rengzin Hall, and saw Linchuo and Ahu. With just one glance, he could see that Linchuo was the master and Ahu was the attendant. When he was facing Linchuo, he always bowed slightly habitually. He also immediately remembered the words of Jin's second servant, who was very popular. No, he doesn't think it's flamboyant. Obviously, Linchuo's background is unusual. He had the careless arrogance and graceful ease of an aristocratic child. These nobles, no matter how humble they are, can't change the things in their bones. Such a person, coming here as a guard, Ma Qi felt that he could not understand. As soon as he lifted his robe and went up the steps, the eyes of Linchuo and Ahu immediately locked on him. Master Ma Qi bowed his hands to the two of them again and again, I'm called Ma Qi below, I need to talk to your boss about something. At this time, Zhang Yuzi in the corner put down the book, stood up, and walked out. Ma Qi's eyes were immediately attracted to the past. At first glance, a young man with his Hylan and jade tree seemed to be from an aristocratic family just like Linchuo. He had a unique arrogance in him, but he lacked the calmness of Linchuo. He recognized that he had read countless people, but he was suddenly unsure of this young man's origin. Then, he saw a second person he wasn't sure about. Gu Yunjiao stood up from behind the table and looked at him quietly. This girl was wearing a cotton skirt. Since she came here to sit in the hall, she should not be from a big family, but she had an air of calmness that he had never seen in any woman. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 233. Ma Qi again bowed his hands to Gu Yunjiao and said with a ha-ha, this Reng Xintang is really hiding a dragon and a crouching tiger. Linchuo and Ahu walked behind Gu Yunjiao and stood up, while Zhang Yuzi half blocked in front of Gu Yunjiao. I don't know if Ma Qi is here, what advice do you have? Ma Qi's eyes flickered, when he came, he just wanted to get back a little face on the premise of not making enmity with Ren Xintang. After seeing Linchuo, Zhang Yuzi, and Gu Yunjiao, his mind has completely changed. These people are not ordinary people and must not be offended. He smiled and said, I came here specially to make amends for you. The old man beside him gave him a surprised look. On the way he came just now, Master Ma was still talking to him about how to get back to the place. Why did the tone suddenly change? Zhang Yuzi smiled slightly, Ma Qi is joking, you and I only met for the first time today, So why should you apologize? Maki still smiled, I am apologizing for my incompetent brother-in-law. Zhang Yuzi nodded, so that's the case, Maki is too polite, it's not a big deal for your relative to buy a root of ginseng and want to credit it, but it's also my fault that we are new here and don't know the name of Maki, otherwise, a ginseng, so why not give it to your dear relatives? Maki couldn't stop twitching at the corners of his mouth. Zhang Yuzi said something euphemistically, saving him enough face. But he knew in his heart, what kind of credit, the second kid Jin must want to take it for nothing. I didn't expect this handsome young man to speak so decently at such a young age. He handed over again and again, my parents-in-law died early, and my brother-in-law was left undisciplined, so I developed a jerk temperament. I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Zhang Yuzi smiled more sincerely now, it's okay, it's all a misunderstanding, just say it. If Ki doesn't dislike it, why don't you go in and have a cup of tea? Maki was about to agree when suddenly another person came in. Zhang Yuzi recognized that this was King Kang's bodyguard. This man came in and glanced at Maki first, then bowed his hands respectfully to Zhang Yuzi. Zhang Gongzi, our lord got a new chess book yesterday, and it records a lot of endgames. The lord specially ordered the villain to invite Zhang Gongzi. Go through the house and read the remnants together. Zhang Yuzi nodded slightly, Secretary Su, please wait a moment. Guard Su agreed with this sentence, feeling slightly happy, this young Master Zhang is the prince's guest, and when he came, the prince also explained to him that he must be respectful to young Master Zhang. Such a person, who has only met once, remembers his surname. Guard Su felt that he was valued, and his impression of Zhang Yuzi became better and better. Zhang Yuzi surrendered to Maki, Seventh Master, I have something to do with you, so I won't accompany you, and we will drink together another day. At this time, Maki was completely convinced. The rumors that Zhang Yuzi had contacts with the palace made him more and more convinced that Zhang Yuzi was not an ordinary person. He respectfully said, young Master Zhang, just go and be busy, there are many interruptions here. Zhang Yuzi glanced at Gu Yunjiao and followed Su guards away. Seeing Zhang Yu getting on the carriage, Maki hurriedly bid farewell. Lin Chuo looked at Maki's back and smiled slightly. He believed that from today onwards, the Xian gang would not come to trouble Ren Xintang again. Lin Chuo walked around the room and ran to the place where Zhang Yuzi sat every day. He picked up Zhang Yuzi's book and glanced at it. He originally thought it was 4 books and 5 classics, but it turned out to be a history book. He had nothing to do, so he also looked at the book. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 234. Maki had been gone for less than half an hour, and Pharaoh brought someone to the door with a gift box. When Lao Wan came in, he smiled, and asked people to put the gift box on the table and cupped his hands. This is a little thought from Maki, and it is an apology for you. Our 7th Master also said that in the future, if the brothers of the Xian gang collide, please ask Dr. Gu to help them take a look. Gu Yunjiao suddenly understood that what Maki meant was to let the people from the Xian gang take care of Ren Xintang's business. She turned around and smiled, then thank you 7th Master. Lao Wang said goodbye and left after giving the gift. Lu Zhu said coldly, this Maki, outsiders say that this person has a ruthless temperament, I think he is very kind, not only did he come to apologize in person, but he also sent gifts to him. This is too benevolent, too particular. Lin Chuo and Gu Yunjiao laughed in unison. The two looked at each other, and Lin Chuo said, if he was kind, he wouldn't be the leader. If he really wants to apologize, he should come with a gift box when he comes. After he came here, he thought that King Kong was standing behind us. The apology and the gift box were purely to see the face of the king. Lu Zhu was stunned when he heard it, and after a while, he said, you people have powerful brains, and I don't know how to see so many twists and turns. Zhang Shun patted Lu Zhu on the shoulder and smiled at him with caring eyes for the mentally handicapped. Gu Yunjiao asked Atai to take a few gift boxes and hand them over to the Chen family. After a while, Mrs. Chen came out and said with a fuss, "Who is this gift box from? There are actually 2 pieces of satin in it." Gu Yunjiao said casually, "That mother keeps embroidery or makes clothes." Chen Shi went in thoughtfully. On this day, Zhang Yuyi did not return overnight. The palace sent the attendant over, saying that young Master Zhang was going to study the game of chess with the prince all night. The next afternoon, Zhang Yuzi returned. After dinner in the evening, Zhang Yuzi entered Chen's house and said to her seriously, "From tomorrow, I will go to the academy to study. After this, you can come back and rest for a day in 10 days. Chen Shi was overjoyed, "But Yuelu Academy?" Zhang Yuzi nodded. Chen clasped his hands together and recited the Buddha, the Bodhisattva, "Bless my son to study smoothly in the academy, and I will be named on the gold list in the future." Zhang Yuzi smiled and took out another banknote and handed it to her. Chen Shi still recognized a few words, and when he saw the amount on it, he almost fainted. "Where did you get so much money?" Zhang Yuzi was funny, and he scared his mother like this in 1,000 tales. He said softly, "I'm trying to earn it. This is for my mother to take for her daily household use." "Mother, don't be reluctant, just take care of the flowers. The food can be better. Several children will grow up. After the money is spent, I still have it here." Chen Shi nodded with a complicated expression. Ever since she heard that Saburo was picked up by the prince yesterday, she knew that something was going to be completely different. She doesn't know what class crossing is, she only knows that if her son can associate with the prince, she will never kneel down for a few taels of silver again. Chen Shi suddenly jumped up, "Going to the academy tomorrow? Then I have to quickly ask sister-in-law Osmanthus to fry some small fish for you. Don't you like it? By the way, there is also bacon and preserved fish. I told her to steam it and put it in a jar and bring it to you. There are so many people eating in the academy, and the food designation is not good," she said and hurried out. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 235. Zhang Yuzi looked at Chen's back, and felt extra warmth in his heart. He didn't know who his biological mother was. He thought that he was abandoned by his biological parents. He remembered that his father said before he died that he picked him up under a tree. However, over the years, the Chen family has been fond of him, even more parent-child. In his heart, the Chen family is his biological mother. After coming out of Chen's house, Zhang Yuzi walked around the yard a few times, glanced at Gu Yunjiao's house several times, and finally couldn't help walking over there and knocking on the window. Gu Yunjiao opened the window, saw him, and said with a smile, "Is something wrong?" Zhang Yuzi gave Gu Yunjiao a deep look. "Well, I have something to tell you, I'm going to the academy tomorrow." Gu Yunjiao wasn't too surprised, she made a good deal with the prince, and Yuelu Academy didn't want to enter as soon as she wanted. She nodded, "Well, don't worry, I will take care of my mother and my younger siblings." Zhang Yuzi hesitated before saying, "I'm going here, and it will take 10 days before I can come back. By that time, it's almost March, and the peach blossoms should be blooming. Let's go see the peach blossoms together." Gu Yunjiao nodded happily, Okay, I'll buy a few more kites to fly. Liaolang, Xiaochuan Sanya and Yingzi must be very happy." Zhang Yuzi was silent for a moment. "Okay. You don't have to buy kites, I make two myself." Gu Yunjiao looked at him with bright eyes again. "You still make kites? Why are you so powerful? You can do anything." Zhang Yuzi's mood instantly rose again. "What kind of kite do you want? Butterfly kite? Beauty kite? Or harrier kite?" Gu Yunjiao's eyes turned slightly, and she thought seriously, "Be a harrier kite, let's be a beauty kite. I've never seen a beauty kite before. Zhang Yuzi nodded, okay, then wait for me to come back. Gu Yunjiao smiled and said, is your luggage packed? Is there anything I can do to help? Zhang Yuzi said warmly, there's not much luggage, I'll pack it myself. You have to take care of yourself at home. Gu Yunjiao nodded vigorously and smiled again, you also study hard, I'm still waiting for you to become an official in the future, so that you can be my backer. She knows very well that in this era, money alone is not enough, there is no power behind it, and anyone can bully you. Even the wealth of thousands of families can be vanished in an instant. She only hopes that Saburo will study hard and become a high-ranking official in the future, and she can also be sheltered by him as Saburo's elder sister-in-law. Zhang Yuzi seemed to promise, I will, don't worry. Lu Lang ran over at this time and pulled Zhang Yuzi, brother, Xiao Chuan, and I can't do our homework, come and teach us. Zhang Yuzi glanced at Gu Yunjiao helplessly, and was dragged away by Liu Lang. After a while, Zhang Yuzi's reprimanding voice came from the east wing, have you two grown your brains? Is there anything you can't do, just copy it? Gu Yunjiao smiled in the room and closed the window. The next morning a carriage stopped outside the shop. Zhang Yuzi came out with a burden on his back, Chen stuffed 2 jars into the carriage, stood beside the carriage with Gu Yunjiao, explained a bunch of words, and then reluctantly sent Zhang Yuzi away. Gu Yunjiao waited for the carriage to go away, and said, I think Saburo needs a book boy. I usually help him with some chores in his life, and he can also arrange accommodation and food for him when he goes out. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 236. Chen slapped his thigh, that's right. If Chiu Wei had a book boy to take care of him last year, he wouldn't eat the wrong thing and have diarrhea. When I see the yellow-toothed man, let him pay attention and find a literate boy to be Saburo's book boy. Just as he was talking, Zhang Shun came to work. He smiled when he saw Gu Yunjiao, Master, I met the second sister in Luoyang next door early in the morning. She asked me to thank you. It's said that after taking the medicine you prescribed, it's much better, I don't vomit blood anymore, and the stuffy feeling in my heart is gone. Gu Yunjiao nodded, that's good. She paused, did her man beat her? Zhang Shun shook his head, her man is a painter, and he's been working in someone else's house these days. While chatting gossip, the two went in and got off the board and opened the door. Not long after the store opened, the yellow fangs came. Gu Yunjiao hurriedly said, I was looking for you, but you came by coincidence. The yellow-toothed man said with a smile, what's the matter with Dr. Gu looking for me? Gu Yunjiao said, I'm going to ask you to buy a kid, preferably someone who can read, not too old, and be smart. The yellow-toothed man thought, is it because you bought it to be a book boy for young Master Zhang? Gu Yunjiao nodded. The yellow-toothed man smiled, that's fine, then I'll keep an eye on it, and I'll send it over if there's a suitable one. By the way, I'm looking for young Master Zhang for something. Gu Yunjiao waved her hand, then it's unfortunate that you came here, he just went to the academy. The yellow-toothed man rubbed his hands together, looking a little anxious. The letter he got last night was that there was a son of a big landlord who owed more than 20,000 taels to the casino. He still hadn't paid the money, and was planning to use the family's fields to offset the account. The land of his house happened to be a piece of land, which met Zhang Yuzi's requirements. He was also in a hurry to make this deal, as soon as the land came out, it would be robbed. Gu Yunjiao looked at him, is it urgent? The yellow-toothed man nodded, I'm in a hurry. Gu Yunjiao didn't ask anything, just said, he went to Yuelu Academy. It's just gone, if you run faster, you might be able to catch up with him. The yellow-toothed man bowed his hands and hurried away. Afraid of delaying time, he called a carriage, urging the driver all the way. When he arrived at the gate of Uulu Academy, he happened to see that another carriage had just stopped, and Zhang Yuzi opened the curtain and got off. The yellow-toothed man hurriedly shouted, "Young Master Zhang." He jumped out of the car and hurriedly ran towards Zhang Yuzi. After listening to him, Zhang Yuzi said decisively, "Then go now. When it comes to enrolling in school, it doesn't matter half a day or a day later, buying land is a big deal." The two got into the carriage again and went straight to the landlord's house. The mansions of the landlord's house were open. After walking through the courtyard several times in a row, he saw the main lord. A man with dark circles under his eyes sat absent-mindedly in the hall. There were a lot of people beside them, some were planning to sell, some were looking at the title deeds one by one, and there were thugs standing beside them. The Yellow Fang hurried over and said something to one of them. The man nodded to Zhang Yuzi, "Wait a minute, when the accounts are settled, we can make a deed." At this moment, a woman with disheveled hair suddenly rushed in, grabbed the man with dark circles and tore and beat it, crying, "You sold all the land at home, what will our mothers eat and drink in the future? I might as well be dead, I might as well be hit and killed." Saying so, he released the man and slammed into the pillar. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 237. A thug in the casino quickly grabbed the woman. Casinos only want money, not life. Getting people killed is trouble after all. The woman was dragged by others, and seemed to have no strength to move anymore. She just collapsed on the ground and wept bitterly. The man with dark circles held his head and seemed to be about to collapse. Zhang Yuzi shook his head. If he hadn't known the precipice, he would have ended up like this sooner or later. He secretly warned himself in his heart that he would never enter the casino again in the future. There is a lot of land in this family. Zhang Yuzi spent more than 10,000 taels of silver to buy more than 2,600 acres of land. The deed was signed on the spot. Zhang Yuzi took the black-eyed man to the yamen to go through the formalities, and then he felt at ease. The yellow-toothed people also got a lot of brokerage fees. Zhang Yuzi thought for a while and said, "I also ask Lao Huang to help me find a housekeeper and servants. With so many places, I don't have time to deal with tenants. Someone has to take care of it for me." The yellow-toothed man smiled, "Just right, Dr. Gu said that he wants to find a book boy for you. I'll ask in a while. If there's a suitable one, I'll bring it over and pick it out for you." When Zhang Yuzi heard this, his heart warmed. "Okay, then I'll bother you." By this time, it was almost noon. Zhang Yuzi didn't go back. He found a place to eat lunch, and went to the academy again. In the afternoon, Gu Yunjiao was dispensing medicine in the store when she heard a commotion outside. He looked up and saw a big man came in surrounded by several people. Zhang Shun has become a good boy now, looked at these people carefully, ran to Gu Yunjiao's side, and whispered, "Master, this looks like someone from the Xian gang." Gu Yunjiao also whispered, "Could it be to take care of our business here?" What else did Zhang Shun say? Those people have already shouted, "Which one is Dr. Gu here?" Gu Yunjiao said loudly, "It's me." She looked over and saw a large hematoma on one eye of the big man, red like a ripe tomato, and he couldn't even open his eyes. The big man tried his best to look at Gu Yunjiao with the other eye. "Are you Dr. Gu?" Gu Yunjiao nodded. The big man murmured, "What a little girl." The person next to him said, "Dr. Gu, show him quickly, his eyes have just been beaten." Gu Yunjiao saw that the top of her eyes were also swollen and bright, and there should be blood congestion inside. It is best to drain the congestion and then apply the medicine. She hesitated for a moment. If she used a gold needle to puncture the hematoma, she might accidentally poke the man in the eye. She suddenly remembered a case she had read in a book before. She beckoned to call Atai and gave him a low command. Artie ran away quickly. Guyunjiao asked the man to sit down, took out the disinfectant, and carefully disinfected the area around his eyes. After a while, Atai came back with a few sticky bugs in his hands. Guyunjiao didn't dare to touch this thing, so she instructed Atai, wrap it up with a bandage and put it on his eyes. A few people who followed said, "Isn't this a leech? What is this thing used for?" Atai quickly wrapped the leech and put it on the man's eyes. The leech likes to suck blood most. After a while, the hematoma above the man's eyes gradually subsided, and a few leeches that were originally thin also became fatter. Everyone was amazed. I didn't expect this leech to be so useful. After the hematoma was sucked, Guyunjiao used a self-made cotton swab to apply the bruise ointment to the big man, without even bandaging. The big man tried to open his eyes, but he opened them slowly. The big man was overjoyed. He thought his eyes would be swollen for a long time. He bowed his hands to Guyunjiao. Dr. Gu's medical skills are indeed superb. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 238. This group of people gave money and quickly left. Zhang Shun laughed. This Maki really keeps his promises. He must have explained it to the people from the Xian gang, otherwise they wouldn't come here on purpose. Guyunjiao shook her head. This makes us owe Maki a favor. Linchuo suddenly replied in the corner, "What are you afraid of? You are so skilled in medicine, there will be a time when he will beg you in the future." Guyunjiao smiled. Seeing that her teacup was empty, she got up and went to the backyard to fetch the kettle. When I entered, I saw Laoju squatting in front of the kitchen washing vegetables. Seeing Guyunjiao, Laoju got up quickly, and said nervously, "Master, the medicine has been cut. The fried medicine has also been fried." Guyunjiao looked at the large and small bamboo plagues in the yard with cut medicines. She nodded, "I don't drink now, but it's more efficient than before." She didn't think too much about why Laoju was able to wash vegetables. He glanced at Laoju and said, "People look refreshed. Let's make 2 new clothes and wear them. I think it's almost the same as Zhang Shun." Laoju said happily, "Master, is what you said true?" Guyunjiao nodded, went in and brought out the kettle. Laoju suddenly came over. "Can the owner give me a month's worth of money first? I'll go buy a comb, and then buy 2 clothes." Guyunjiao looked at his messy hair, smiled and took out a piece of silver for him. "Come on, remember to buy another toothbrush, buy some tooth powder, and tidy it up, it's nice to look at." Laoju poured out the water for washing the vegetables and ran out quickly. Guyunjiao carried a kettle to refill herself, and went over to refill Linchuo. A few days passed in a flash, and it seemed that tomorrow was Zhang Yuzi's day to rest. Chen Shi talked about Saburo coming back in the evening, and went out to buy a lot of vegetables early in the morning. There are chickens, fish, and meat, and it looks like a festival. In the evening, Zhang Yuzi really came back in a carriage. He didn't come back alone, he also brought a servant. He was carrying a small burden on his own, and the servant was carefully holding 2 kites in his hands. Guyunjiao ran out happily, "The kite is ready." Just as Zhang Yuzi was about to speak, Lu Lang and Gu Chuan also came back outside. When the 2 of them saw the kite, they jumped 3 feet high, and Rokuro stretched out his hand, "Give it to me, show me quickly." Zhang Yuyi took the beautiful kite from the servant's hand and handed it to Guyunjiao, then said, "The kite is yours." Lu Lang said unhappily, "The 2 of us only play one." Zhang Yuzi glanced at him, "Wrong, it's not for the 2 of you, it's for the 4 of you." Lu Lang's mouth is flat, wanting to say that the 3rd brother is partial. Why can the sister-in-law have one of her own? Think about it, is his favorite sister-in-law, and no one else, then forget it. However, his eyes still looked at the beautiful kite with envy. He thought that kite was much prettier than the Harrier kite. He looked at him and suddenly said, "Hey, This beauty kite looks like a sister-in-law. Gu Yunjiao giggled, really? Am I so good looking? Rokuro nodded vigorously, sister-in-law is prettier than this beauty 100 times. Gu Chuan seriously added, 1,000 times. Gu Yunjiao giggled, she really hadn't been so happy for a long time. She wished she could hug and kiss the two children, but in order not to shock the world, she could only playfully rub the two children's hair into shreds, and then ran to the backyard with the kite in hand. She was a little reluctant to fly such a beautiful kite, so she put it away first. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jinkui. Chapter 239. Zhang Yuzi took the servant into the yard as well, and said to Chen, "This is the book boy that the Yellow Teeth helped me find. It was specially sent to the academy for me the day before yesterday." Mrs. Chen saw that the boy had clear eyebrows, his eyes were bright, and there was a sense of shrewdness. She nodded with satisfaction, "What's his name?" The servant replied, "Mrs. Hui, the son named Duruo the youngest." Chen Shi murmured, "Duruo." The servant said again, "Young master said, Duruo is a single medicine." Chen Shi laughed, "That's good, our family is a pharmacy, and this name really suits the occasion." Gu Yunjiao heard the kite and came out, clapped her hands, "This name sounds good, Saburo really knows how to name it." Zhang Yuzi stared at her and smiled lightly. At this time, Zhang Shun ran in, "Master, second sister-in-law Yang has come to see a doctor again." Gu Yunjiao frowned and walked out quickly, to see the second sister-in-law Yang sitting at the table. Her eyes were dark blue, and even her cheeks were swollen. Gu Yunjiao hurriedly asked, "Is it your man again?" Sister-in-law Yang nodded while weeping. Gu Yunjiao clenched her fists in anger, how could there be such a man? Zhang Yuzi stood at the back door, silent, and looked at Gu Yunjiao quietly. Gu Yunjiao took Yang's second sister-in-law's pulse. Fortunately, there was no internal injury this time, and her fist fell on her face. While prescribing the prescription, she said, "Second sister-in-law Yang, you've been injured twice in 3 days. It's not a solution to continue like this." Ahu snorted beside him, "The man who beats his wife is the most cowardly. I'll go back with you in a while, and repair your man well, and see if he dares to beat you in the future." Second sister-in-law Yang shook her head in fright, "No, no, I'm afraid he will fight even harder when you leave." Gu Yunjiao prepared the recipe, went to get the medicine for Zhang Shun, took the oil for bruising, and carefully rubbed the second sister-in-law Yang. Zhang Shun grabbed the medicine, came over and sighed, and handed it to her. Second sister-in-law Yang was about to leave with the medicine, but Gu Yunjiao suddenly said, "Second sister-in-law Yang, wait a minute, there is another medicine introduction, I forgot to tell you." Second sister-in-law Yang turned to look at her. Gu Yunjiao said seriously, "When you get home, take a sharpening stone and grind the kitchen knife at home on it. The knife needs to be sharpened, once a day." Lin Chuo in the corner suddenly laughed. Second sister-in-law Yang didn't understand yet, and asked, "Is it decoction with a sharpened knife?" Zhang Yuzi came over, "I don't need that water. After the injury is healed, you can also sharpen the knife every few days, and choose when your man is at home." Lin Chuo in the corner interjected, "When sharpening the knife, it's best to have a fierce look in your eyes." Ahu also understood, smiled, and said, "Yes, you can still say a few words, and then dare to beat the old lady, I will not kill you." Sister Yang's second sister-in-law burst into tears. She hurriedly wiped away her tears, and said to everyone, "Thank you, Dr. Gu, thank you. Second sister-in-law Yang's house is not far from here." She went back with the medicine bag, and when she entered the door, her man scolded, "Where are you going to die? It's all at this time. If you don't cook, I think you're going to be beaten. If it were in the past, Sister Yang's second sister-in-law would have been terrified already. She doesn't know what happened today. Little Dr. Gu of Rengzentang, and the words that the good-looking men said to her seemed to be still lingering in her ears. Suddenly she walked into the kitchen with her chest up, put down the medicine bag, found a kitchen knife and a sharpening stone, poured some water on it, and began to sharpen the knife. The Prime Minister seduced me to give birth. Author, Jin Kui. Chapter 240. Yang Er's sister-in-law's man Fugui was stunned for a moment, and rushed to the kitchen angrily. He first heard a harsh hoo-ho sound, and when he entered, he saw his wife sharpening the knife. Just as he was about to continue scolding, he saw his daughter-in-law suddenly raised her head. Her eyes were fierce like he had never seen before. He involuntarily took a step back, and his voice suddenly dropped a few degrees. "Why don't you hurry up to cook? What are you sharpening your knife for?" Second sister-in-law Yang was already panicking in her heart, but now she was holding on. But when she heard his voice suddenly drop, she suddenly understood something. She kept sharpening the knife in her hand, staring at Fugui, and said coldly, "What kind of food are you still eating? You beat him every day for 3 days. If you go on like this, you will be beaten to death sooner or later. It's better to die together." Fugui looked at his daughter-in-law in surprise. Is this mother-in-law crazy today? He wanted to scold, but the sound of sharpening the knife not only made people irritable, but also made him palpitate for no reason. Fugui glanced at the knife and muttered, "If you don't do it, you won't do it? I'll go to the street to eat a bowl of noodles." After speaking, he turned around and left. The sound of sharpening knives accompanies wealth and honor. Sister Yang's second sister-in-law waited for a while, guessing that the rich and noble had gone far, and then dropped the kitchen knife in her hand and cried happily. In Rengzentang's backyard, everyone had formed a table and started to eat. Chen Shi looked around and suddenly said, "Where's the old nine?" Gu Yunjiao remembered, "He went to buy clothes, leave him some food." Just as he was talking, the old nine came in a hurry, carrying a burden in his hand. Gu Yunjiao smiled and said, "Just bought it?" Lao Ju put the burden on the table next to him and smiled, "I bought it at the ready-to-wear shop next door, and the boss gave it to me for a cheap price." He glanced at Osman thus cryptically. And Osman thus didn't pay attention to him at all, and was serving Yingzi. Lao Ju didn't care. He filled the meal himself and found a place to squeeze in to eat. After dinner, everyone scattered. Only Osman thus stayed to clean up, while Yingzi and Sanya helped. Seeing that they put the tableware and chopsticks in a big basket, Lao Ju hurried over. "This is heavy, I'll move it to the kitchen." Osman thus was stunned for a moment. Xian Lao Ju took the initiative to help her wash the vegetables, and she felt a little strange. Now that everyone is gone, it's even more strange that Lao Ju stays behind to help. Knowing that Lao Ju was a bachelor, a vague idea arose in her heart. She was startled, and quickly dismissed the idea. She came out of the main room and saw Zhang Yuzi and Gu Yunjiao talking under the shelf of the honeysuckle. She didn't dare to look any further, and hurried to the kitchen. Zhang Yuzi whispered to Gu Yunjiao, "I asked someone and said that there is a peach forest by the river east of the city, and the scenery is very good." Gu Yunjiao thought about it, but if she went out to play for a day and didn't see a doctor for a day, the pharmacy would not be able to operate. Then the peach blossoms are blooming. Zhang Yuzi looked at her gently, "It should be open. Our academy is on the mountain, and there are several peach trees in it that have buds. The peach blossoms on the mountain should bloom later, and the ones by the river should bloom." Gu Yunjiao smiled, "Then go." She went into the house and asked Mrs. Chen if she wanted to go with her. Chen Shi waved his hands again and again, "What am I going to do? It's good for you young people to go to spring or something." Early the next morning, when the shop opened and breakfast was over, A few children who were going to go out to play couldn't control Se Huan's mood and began to run wild in the yard.